Um, if you care about healthy soil, better harvests, and, wasting as little time as possible, make sure you subscribe to Evergreen Garden right now, because this is honestly one of those techniques that quietly changes everything once you start using it. Today we're talking about the lazy composting method that works roughly 3 times faster than traditional compost piles, without turning, without perfect ratios, and, well, without babysitting a heap every weekend. This is not theory. This is a practical system real gardeners use when they want compost fast and don't want compost to become another job. Most gardeners are taught that composting requires constant turning, careful layering, and precise carbon to nitrogen math. In reality, this is why many piles stall. Turning exposes material to air but also releases heat, which actually slows microbial breakdown if done too often. Open piles dry out quickly, especially in warm climates, forcing microbes into dormancy. On top of that, most home piles never maintain consistent moisture or temperature, which means decomposition crawls instead of runs. The lazy composting method fixes all of this by focusing on containment, moisture retention, and biological density rather than physical labor. Instead of chasing oxygen with a pitchfork, you let biology do the heavy lifting. Lazy composting works because it creates a semi-sealed environment that stays warm, moist, and microbe-rich. This method is sometimes called passive hot composting, trench composting, or container composting, depending on how it's applied, but the principle is always the same. Organic material breaks down faster when it stays consistently damp, lightly compacted and protected from excessive airflow. The fastest version uses a bin barrel or heavy-duty bag that limits evaporation while still allowing minimal air exchange. Microbes thrive in these conditions, especially thermophilic bacteria that generate heat. When heat stays trapped instead of escaping into the air, decomposition speeds up dramatically. To get started, you'll want a container that holds at least 100 liters. This could be a plastic compost bin, a large tote with some small holes drilled near the top, or even a woven feed sack lined with cardboard. The main goal here is insulation, not airflow. Place your container directly on the soil, so beneficial organisms can migrate upward from the ground. Begin with a brown base layer, about 10 centimeters thick. Dry leaves, shredded cardboard, or straw all work well for this. Then add a green layer at roughly half that thickness, using kitchen scraps, fresh weeds, grass clippings, or manure. A reliable working ratio is roughly 2 parts browns to 1 part greens by volume. Now, this ratio doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but staying close to it will help prevent odor and overheating. Moisture is honestly critical. Each layer should feel like a wrung-out sponge. If you squeeze a handful and water drips out, it's too wet. If it feels dusty or dry, decomposition will really slow down. Once everything is layered, gently press the material down. In this case, compaction is actually a benefit, not a problem. Traditional piles, they lose heat and moisture constantly. But with lazy composting, both are trapped inside. As microbes get to work on those nitrogen-rich materials, they actually generate heat. And that heat, well, it stays right there in the container, pushing the internal temperatures high enough to really speed up the breakdown, all without the need for turning. Since the pile isn't disturbed, fungal networks can establish themselves early on. Fungi tend to be much slower to colonize piles that are turned, but in these undisturbed systems they quickly take over, breaking down lignin, stems, and those tough plant fibers with impressive efficiency. This dominance of fungi is actually one of the main reasons lazy compost is often ready in about 6 to 8 weeks, instead of, say, 3 to 6 months. Maintenance here is really simple and honestly quite infrequent. About every 7 to 10 days, just open the container and add new material, keeping to the same ratio as before. If you happen to notice the pile smells a bit sour, go ahead and add more browns and just lightly mix the top layer. If it's smelling earthy and warm, best to leave it alone. Only water when the material feels dry to the touch. In many climates, you'll find that watering once every 2 to 3 weeks is plenty, thanks to the closed environment. And remember, never turn the entire pile. Turning actually resets the microbial zones and slows down the very process you're aiming to speed up. One of the most powerful uses of this method is direct soil composting. Gardeners dig a trench about 30 centimeters deep between crop rows, fill it with kitchen scraps and weeds, cover it with soil and plant nearby. Using a 2-to-1 brown to green ratio still applies here. For example, a bucket of food scraps should be buried with 2 buckets of dry leaves or straw. Within weeks, soil life explodes around the trench, feeding nearby plants. Root growth increases, water retention improves, and nutrient availability stabilizes without synthetic inputs. Finished lazy compost is dark, crumbly, and smells like forest soil. You may still see small fragments, which is fine. This compost is biologically active and should be used as a soil amendment, not a sterile potting mix. Apply it at a rate of 2 to 3 centimeters on garden beds, or mix 1 part compost with 3 parts native soil when planting. For fruit trees, spread compost in a wide ring under the drip line rather than piling it against the trunk. Gardeners who adopt lazy composting rarely go back. It saves time, produces better compost, and integrates smoothly into real gardening schedules. It works year-round, scales easily, and improves soil biology instead of disrupting it. Most importantly, it turns waste into fertility without becoming a chore. If this guide helped you rethink composting, subscribe to Evergreen Garden for more practical, no-nonsense techniques that actually work. Share this with another gardener who's tired of turning piles and waiting months for results. Healthy soil starts with smarter systems, and this is one of the smartest you can use.